Good morning and welcome back to day 2 of the Co-Create Design Festival 2022. Yesterday we had a fascinating conversation which you should be able to still find both on Facebook and YouTube, and if you missed it for whatever reason, please go listen back to it because some fascinating issues coming up and some early start to solutions around how we create and design water-sensitive cities. The focus today is going to be on the citizens. Citizens both in terms of getting them into a room as part of the design thinking process, but also remembering that whatever process we undertake, ultimately it will serve the citizens of this country. My name is Africa Melane. It's going to be my joy and pleasure to host this brief formal part of the panel discussion. I hope you're going to be part of the conversation. Do use the comment section, both on Facebook and YouTube, to pose any questions to the panel members. And of course, we'll make sure that we include those as well in the 2 hours we have you. This, of course, is made possible by the generosity of the Consulate General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. They've had this partnership with the Craft and Design Institute for more than 20 years now, and the dialogue continues. And it is a culmination of what has been several months of creative exchange dialogues that really gave us the meat of what we need to be discussing here today. They've worked this year with University of Cape Town's Future Water Institute, as the City of Cape Town, as well as the Institute for Landscape Architecture in South Africa. And just at the top of it, I always like to thank those who made this possible. They've put together an incredible panel of guests, 3 of them are joining me here at Youngblood on Bree Street in Cape Town, and we've got one joining us virtually from KwaZulu-Natal, and I will introduce you to them shortly. But as always, we start, of course, effectively with our host today, the Consul General for the Kingdom of the Netherlands here in Cape Town, Helen Rekes. Helen, lovely to have you back. Yesterday was amazing, wasn't it?
It surely was.
You'll need to use your microphone so that those joining us online can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, it surely was amazing. It was a very.
All right. I think you need to flick it on. That's what they're trying to tell me. Erica, you better start doing that as well for your Erica Alk, of course, the CEO of the Craft and Design Institute.
Excuse me. Thank you, Africa, for the warm words again, and welcome to everybody here again today and also at home watching it online. Yes, I really thought it was amazing yesterday. I heard so many interesting things from Johannesburg and from other cities where the cities are trying to deal with this issue of water and water scarcity.
One of my reflections at the end of it was that some of these challenges that we pose and dialogue over, certainly on the African continent, will need systems designs to bring about solutions, right? So it's not about a product, it's about how do we build a system that makes it possible for us to realize this thing. And I asked yesterday about how the Netherlands is responding to a drought, and today you've got some really nice examples actually, particularly out of Rotterdam, that you can reflect on with us.
Yes, and thank you for asking. I think it is very nice to mention this, what the city of Rotterdam is doing in the design, and it is also very much linked to the theme of today of the citizens, because the citizens are very much involved in this whole idea of how can we make a city resilient. So the example includes in the city of Rotterdam to save water, permeable pavements, water squares, rain gardens, and storage. And what Rotterdam is trying to do is with public and private landlords to develop like a green-blue grid. And that means that you have plants on rooftops, that's the green part, but these gardens and these plants are equipped with reservoirs for excess water flow. So that's the blue part. And not only does that mean that you have a way to deal with the excess water, but you also save water for the times when we have droughts and it is quite unbelievable, the Netherlands being such a country of water, but we had the worst drought in a century last summer. So these are some of the examples that city has engaged upon.
And central to those engagements was the citizen.
Yes.
Both in terms of getting their buy-in to let's look at this solution, and then having them participating in that solution.
Oh, absolutely. I think it has really made the local citizens very enthusiastic. And anybody who has access to a rooftop is also making gardens themselves, like personal small gardens. So you see not only that the city is doing it in a larger context, but you see local homeowners also participating in this and following sort of the examples that are done in a larger scale.
Now, Erica, in Cape Town and South Africa, generally our roof gardens are like that. There's an English word for it, I'm sure, but you know what I mean, which means planting gardens on our rooftops would be a challenge because given our weather, you would think, one, let's take advantage of that. You help with regulation of temperature. And two, we have a food insecurity challenge in this country that we need to address.
And the question is
that it would be lovely to see an example that they are demonstrating in Rotterdam in a South African context.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were speaking that, and it's like, I mean, I suppose maybe this is also a communication challenge, is that there are so many examples of solutions that are really kind of simple in a way and quite exciting, but also game changers. But people also just don't, they don't know what they don't know. So how do you share? How do we effectively share examples of what people are doing? Because some of these things could be done organically. They don't necessarily need a city or a municipality to drive. They can be driven by citizens themselves.
And we've got great examples of that. I remember, I forget the name of the organizations, but it's Abalimi something. And they work with primarily women who are in various neighborhoods in Cape Town. And they have these planting cooperations, if you like. And then whatever excess fruit and vegetable they have, they will then sell it to people in the suburbs and generate money in that way after feeding, of course, their own families. Yeah. That notion of planting in a tire, so a used tire, and filling that with sand, soil rather, and then starting to plant fruits and vegetables. Yeah. So we have aspects of the examples.
Yeah. But I think actually, I mean, I suppose the problem also if in poorer, under-resourced communities is that you need some of those starter resources. So I kind of often wonder around why are the sort of townships and informal settlements often so barren.
Yeah.
And it's because people, they don't have access to water and taps and the start-up resources to start a vegetable garden. So I mean, I think that is something where then sort of there does need to be intervention or support from other players.
We are placing citizens in focus today. What are you hoping to get out of the discussion?
So I mean, this is I think my kind of favorite topic, and well, I'm interested to hear from the participants about the experiences of it. I think it's there are kind of two ways of looking at it. The one is sort of from the ground up, is how do citizens actually take charge themselves and drive solutions, and then the other part of it is how do our sort of systems people, the municipalities or organizations, work with citizens in a way that is kind of respectful and acknowledging people's experience and own kind of expertise based on their experience. So waiting to hear what
Absolutely.
people say.
Because Helene, the minute you involve citizens, both from the let's understand the challenge, let's put in place a process to design a solution, hopefully that is focused around water, because that's the theme of this festival, and then as a citizen I'm a beneficiary of whatever that process is. It empowers the citizen, doesn't it? It is on.
It really does. It does empower the citizens, and perhaps we are privilege that the citizens also demand it. To come back to the example of Rotterdam, the city of Rotterdam couldn't have done it without the involvement of the citizens, because they feel very strongly about their city and they want to make their city beautiful and green and blue. So it goes both ways.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. I know you'll be here for the entire 2-hour discussion, and I'll have you back on stage towards the end just to reflect on some of what you heard. That is, of course, the Consul General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in South Africa, that's Helene Rekkers, as well as the Group CEO of the Craft and Design Institute, Erica Alk. The two organizations have been working together now for more than 20 years in coming up with some challenges, but more importantly, solutions to those challenges. And of course, this year we're focusing on water-sensitive cities and how to build them. And our focus this morning is going to be on those citizens and how they should be part of the process and hopefully show up some examples where they have been and they are celebrated in that way. A reminder that this evening there will be the Co-Create Blue Green Cities Design Awards. Really, it's a culmination of what has been a wonderful festival where we'll be recognizing projects and initiatives that enhance best practices and focuses on water quality issues. And I do hope that you'll be joining us, even if it is virtually from 6 o'clock this evening. I'm certainly looking forward to that. Now, joining me on the panel are incredible women and an okay gentleman. I do apologize, Patrick Mattal joining us virtually from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. He's a researcher there as well as an independent consultant, and he is a mean mind on his head without a doubt. But with me here, I've got Georgia McTaggart. Georgia is a Cape Town resident, an efficiencies consultant by profession, and she started the Help Up initiative in 2018, which aims to protect the environment as well as create economic opportunities. Dr. Sharon Buchner-Murray, excuse me for butchering your surname, project manager at the Stellenbosch University Water Institute, as well as managing director of COGO, which is a collaborative governance for water security primary cooperative. And we're going to hear some wonderful examples of the work that they do. And then Romy Stander is one of the directors of the Joburg-based NGO Water for the Future, and Lungile Hlajwayo is also here. She's joining us in the audience, and we'll certainly be referring some questions to them. Ladies, gentlemen, joining us virtually, thank you very much for coming through to Cape Town. I hope you're all having a wonderful, wonderful start to your day. Georgia, let me start with you, and perhaps let's start with understanding what the Help Up initiative is all about.
Thank you, Africa. Help Up is about compassionate disruption. So it's not a political organization, it's not a labor organization, and essentially it is an environmental organization because it takes into account that humans are the environment too. And I think that what we attempt to do, or what we strive to do, is to remind our citizens that as part of the environment, yes, we have a responsibility to the environment as it serves us. Obviously, the air we breathe, the water, I don't have to go through the whole list. But also that we actually have the right, and we are all entitled to enjoy that environment. And that we all have an opportunity in some way through various skills development programs, yes, education, but project-based mostly, to actually create that environment. And that is what Help Up is. It's really about bringing awareness to things in a positive and proactive way.
I like that because we often enjoy the constitutional right to a healthy environment and water specifically because that's a focus of our festival. But we often forget the responsibility that we have as individuals to ensure that.
Correct. That's exactly right. And one of the projects that we do, which I can go into later, involves a street garden in Khayelitsha. And the project's referred to as Kirstenbosch in Khayelitsha. It's not a plant. It's not a vegetable garden. It's actually a traditional medicine garden. So all your endemic flora from that particular area of the Cape Flats is planted by Busi Nomyaye and her team, and nurtured by her team, and respected by what is becoming a neighborhood. So it's a really exciting project, because you're saying, let's stop the separation. Let's stop saying township and informal settlement. Let's start saying neighborhood. Let's create neighborhoods, and let's grow that into an expansive, collaborative project with the people sitting in on this panel, the audience here, as well as those who are watching. Let's consider that this is possible, and that everything is actually possible.
For sure. Sharon, do you want to talk to us about COGO, what it seeks to achieve?
Sure. COGO is about social impact. It's to mobilize social impact. So use collaborative governance as a way to build sound relationships, safe relationships, to track commitments, because there need to be commitments to be able to execute, and to make sure that there are sustainable links between communities in the catchment, different water catchment areas. Mainly in the decision-making area, or the decision makers, it's often very difficult for decision makers to go into a space where they need to take action. They don't always have the support or all the information or the necessary research to back that up. So it sort of creates a gap, and it's a fast-moving world. People battle to stay abreast with information, the most relevant and most recent information. So COGO is a bridge builder.
Typical example, Civic Centre in the city of Cape Town is in the heart of the foreshore part of the city. And if you're going to be making water decisions for somebody who lives in Strandfontein, unless you are aware of the community, the lived experience, the challenges that they face every day, you're going to not really make the most informed decisions, which will impact on the community.
Yeah. So we work very closely with the Department of Water and Sanitation, different NGOs that also works with the Department of Water and Sanitation, Environmental Affairs, the Department of Agriculture, especially the river monitoring and maintenance in the river maintenance program, different international projects such as UNESCO, and they all move into communities. So there are people, very able people, that have the relationships with these different communities, and we aim to bring them together, to give them a seat at the table when we discuss very important things that has an impact on your life.
And how have you found that has shifted the needle? The fact that community members, the citizen, is in the room when those decisions are being taken?
Well, to give you an idea, I started with my research in 2012, and it was a hectic situation. There was so much siloed environment. Now I'm actually pleasantly surprised, especially this year with the Department of Water and Sanitation, how they reached out and said, please help us. We're working with the NGOs, bringing the different role players together to work on solutions, very solutions oriented. So we also get to meet people that we don't know, and to learn from them. What do you want? What do you need? How do you see this? It's never top down, it's always a bottom up. But COGO itself is a middle out. Yeah. So work with authority and power structures where the decision makers sit, and the solutions, the complexity of the solutions and the reality.
And I know you brought us some examples. We'll go through those a little bit later. Romy, Water for the Future. What are you seeking to do with your organization?
Hi, can you hear?
Yeah.
Hi. It's a difficult one just to answer like that, because when I started the work of investigating what was this Yixke River where it daylighted, I had no experience or background in environmental affairs per se, and going down this rabbit hole and understanding that the only way you could make a difference to improve the quality of the river was to look at it holistically. And you can't separate the human aspect from the environmental part. And where the Yixkay River daylights in Johannesburg is such a loaded, energetic spot as well. Everything that happens in the canal, around it, on the banks, it's another whole ecosystem. And you really need to understand that before you could start the work. So where I started and originally with Haneli Kutsia, the environmental artist, we went down the route of consulting the experts and understanding firstly that we needed a blank slate and a reliable set of reports and information that we could start from and build from. And so we first commissioned all the various reports that would then inform our environmental management plan that we could then use and compare with the city's data.
And what sort of reports? Just one or two examples of them.
Well, from sensitivity audits, which explain how many different types of alien invasive plants there are and the management plans that come from that, of how you deal with them and take them out in a proper way, to historical reports of the area, like what was here hundreds of years ago before any human intervention, to engineering, hydrological, aquatic ecology. I mean, the things I've learned from where I started to now, I can tell you. People say, oh, what's your degree? And I'm like, no, I just know a lot about a little and a little about a lot. Really, because there is just so much to a river and everyone around a river. And I think early on, when Lungi also joined us, we realized that this wealth of information is so difficult to understand, even if you've got matric or, for us to break it down. The experts can't even tell you where to start. And there's no ABC plan. And you really just need to feel it out. And we were very lucky in about a year ago. We won the Goethe and the British Council Sustainable Together grant. And with that money, we went into the community. And, Lungi can tell you more about that experience. And it's really brought us such a long way that we feel the community is with us today.
Let's actually bring Lungi in. If we can just have a camera on her, please. Tell us about that process of bringing in the community into the conversation, into the discussion.
As an organization, it was...
You'll need to...
Just so that it's on.
No. So you'll need to switch it on and leave it on. And don't worry, the people at the back will manage the levels and all of that.
Yes, okay. Sanbona. So I was just saying that as an organization, it was really, really important for us to come together with the community and share knowledge, right? With all the scientific, the research, it had to come to an ordinary folk that can understand it on small bites and relate to them, understanding that I can make a small difference that can add into to a big difference. And listening to the community was really key for us because, we can think we understand, but we really don't. And how do we bring all that wealth of knowledge that's sitting with communities into togetherness and coming with solutions from the bottom-up movement? Because often those voices get disconnected, misrepresented, and not really given, because then there could be partnerships there, right? So this is part of me, then I take ownership of it, then I look after it, and yeah, so it was so important for our organization to really go down and be grassrooting, ourselves.
Because I imagine we all have individual relationships with the river, right? Some people use the river as access to clean water because perhaps they don't have sanitation from the city. Other people use the river for ritual and for religion, where they'll go and be baptized or speak to them and commute with their ancestors. Other people will use the river for washing their clothes. We all have different relationships with the river, and we all think we have a claim to that. How how was the process of needing to build a community around that river and appreciate that this river belongs to all of us? And yes, if you want to go and use it for ritual, that's fine, but do respect that somebody else is going to need to use it for another reason altogether.
Yeah, I mean, that's like shared relationships as well. And because we are at the bottom, yeah? No, we're on the upper.
We at the,
It's,
no?
yeah.
Where we started, maybe talk about our pop-up office at the Daylight Point.
Yes. So we are intercontinental polluters, right? So everyone down to Alexandra, all the way to Mozambique, at the Indian Ocean, we are up there. So we said, okay, how do we make sure that because it's a culture shift as well. For a long time, people just dump stuff because it's going. They're thinking, okay, it's not here. But I mean, it's really ending up somewhere, affecting someone.
Yeah.
In Alexandra, for an example, they do a big ritual, the sangomas there, because I mean, the energy of the river. But you're cleansing something with what? With water that's dirty. So we had to really bring in, the children, education programs where we say, what role do you play on a small scale? And knowing that affects, because Mozambique, the fish, the seafood comes back and gets eaten by us. But it's got some part of what we did, messing it up. So we had to really connect these two. Because it's so far, you don't think about it.
Yeah.
But it's really close.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Let me bring you in now, Patrick. You are a researcher at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, but you're also an independent consultant. And you've done a lot of work around the Transformative Riverine Management Program. Do you want to talk to us about what that is and the process you undertook to come to wherever you are now in the spectrum?
Good morning, Africa, and also ladies and gentlemen. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Transformative Riverine Management Program, or I've used the acronym TRMP. So basically, the TRMP is all about managing our riverine areas. The main ambition is to manage 7,400 kilometers of our rivers and streams within equitable or Durban's municipal area. So I'm sure you can appreciate that that's quite an ambitious task. So this program has been going on for a while, largely in terms of project preparation. It's received funding from the C40 Cities Finance Facility for the first two, you can say, stages of it. The most recent stage is now funded by the Africa French Development Bank. And so with this project, it's looking at proactive riverine management. It's based on a stream cleaning model known as Seashlands of Depot. Okay, and with that model, it basically looks at the moment it's managing just over 500 kilometers of streams and rivers, basically clearing 3 meters either side of the watercourse with using community cooperatives. So this program was first thought about in 2007 and then actually finally implemented in 2011, and then now this has been used as the base of this Transformative Riverine Management Program. With the TRMP, it's had business case development, it's had benefit cost analysis completed, then there's also been an implementation plan developed, and then at the moment we're looking at developing catchment partnerships, so that includes state and non-state actors, and then it's actually going to be going down to looking at developing precinct plans and then also catchment forums. So that's basically the TRMP in a nutshell. How I basically got involved in it is that, okay, I'm doing my PhD in development studies at UKZN, and I'm looking at water-society relationships from the 1850s until present day. So your discussion yesterday was really interesting to me to actually pick up some of those things. But then, as part of my PhD, I joined this, what was known as the NERA 2030 research project, which was in collaboration with UCT and then also the Chinhoyi University of Technology. And we were looking at this interesting concept of transformative adaptation. And with that, we were looking in Durban and in Morocco. And basically, through our research project, we brought together Durban's riverine community. So that
Yesterday, we covered the topic of cost benefit because quite a bit of the conversation was around revenue and how municipalities are extracting quite a bit of revenue from selling water to you and I that comes out of the tap and all of that. And we often don't think about the work and the investment that needs to go into, an example, working on our riverines, that will not necessarily generate a revenue for the city or the municipality, but as we saw with the recent floods in KwaZulu-Natal, the work that you did actually went on to save quite a bit of the not only welfare and livelihood, but also, quite frankly, lives of people in the communities around those riverines.
Yes, Africa. So just focusing specifically on the TRMP, with this event, at first we were going to do what's known as the cost-benefit analysis, but because it was being undertaken from the municipality's perspective, the actual word was twisted around to benefit cost analysis, because as municipality, you should be interested in your benefits, like for common spaces and those type of things. So just some of the findings from the benefit cost analysis was that for every R1 that the municipality spends, there would be about R2.60 worth of municipal and social benefits. So that's R1 spent and then R2.60 benefits. So that's good. And that was just using the Seashlands and Velo stream cleaning program as the actual basis of this case study. And this was just this exercise was just purely looking at avoided damage costs, to municipal culverts. So that's basically the bridges going over your little rivers and streams. And so it actually gets quite technical and goes into a lot of detail. But then also, as part of the TRMP, I'm also involved in other actual river rehabilitation projects, such as the Palmy Catchment Rehabilitation Project, which is contributing to the TRMP. And one of the actual activities that we do there, that's kind of just emerged out of all our different partnerships, is this: we have this community-based flood early warning system. And so basically, there's also, interestingly enough, a Netherlands connection there through it's what's known as the Delft Fuse system. So Delft Forecast Early Warning System. So basically, the engineers from the Coastal Stormwater and Catchment Management Department in the municipality, they get this technical data on
the storms and the different storm cells, and interpret how they're actually moving. Then we've actually got like WhatsApp groups where it's communicated, say, to like myself, and then also Professor Kathy Sutherland, and also some community members along the river, and then we actually go and look at the river. So I live on the Palmeton River, so I'll go out and have a look at the river, see how high it is, and then we actually give warnings to people downstream. In our particular catchment, there's this Quarry Road West informal settlement, which is right at the bottom, and it's actually, some of the settlement is within the floodplain. And so we've got this where we also other WhatsApp groups where that actually links with Enviro champs in this community, and also community leaders. And during the Durban floods, we were using these different types of knowledge. So this technical knowledge coming from like the science-based knowledge, and then also local knowledge, looking at like what different people along the river were saying, and also in the community at the bottom. And so basically during the flood in April, around 350 structures within the informal settlement were washed away after 10 p.m. at night. Okay, so in the dark. We also had load shedding as well, which added to the challenge. But not one life was lost, and that was due to this community-based flood early warning system. So what's been actually quite important there is that this community has been part of this Palmy Catchment Rehabilitation Project for, maybe 7 years now, 8 years now. There's been trust built. Like the lady you spoke second on the couch, we've been involved, in building trust, and actually being like a bridge between this community and the municipality. So it's been that was actually one of the good things that have actually come out of this terrible flood that we had. But to just put it into perspective, when you look at Durban, we've got a major problem with informal settlements. This is just one informal settlement. There's about 589 others in the city. It comes to something like about 300,000 households. And about 11,000 of those households are actually within the 1 in 100-year floodline. So we're actually looking at upscaling this and this community-based flood early warning system, and trying to include it in the transformative riverine management program. Thanks.
Let's then go to the heart of it. We need citizens to be central to defining the challenge, to coming up with the solution, and working collaboratively with both private and public entities and NGOs in order to get to that solution. It's not as easy as we all make it sound, I don't imagine. I imagine there are some wonderful, wonderful challenges that you each can refer to. So perhaps examples of we hit a wall in that particular instance. Most importantly, this is how we got over that wall. And let me start with you again, Georgia.
Okay. I first want to acknowledge what you said, Sharon, because I really want to say that the Department of Water and Sanitation has been a phenomenal shifting in the past years from a specific management style to a much more inclusive and community-ready sort of platform, and I really must acknowledge that. And I've seen that shift from 2018 to the present time. To answer your question, what are the challenges? The challenges were originally, or initially, around communication. At that stage, it would be, okay, we have a cleanup. We would have to email the city and say, well, we're going to have a cleanup. But then perhaps, please could you arrange for the filled bags to be collected? Now that's gone through an email, and you've had to copy X amount of people, and then it becomes one of that, well, somebody was going to do it and someone was going to organize it. And one of our things is that we close the loop. So if we have a cleanup, we insist that the rubbish bags are collected and taken from that site. because obviously you don't want to have to go fetch it or pick it all up again the next day. So that is definitely something that I feel that has been pivotal for all the cleanup groups and environmental groups that are involved in plastic or waste collection, is that communication between municipalities and those cleanup groups. And it also starts to build the trust from the ground. The people working on the ground can trust, I've done all this work, my back is sore, I'm going home, and I just know that this isn't going to be there when I walk to the shop later. It's going to be collected. And that is the beginning, the fundamental basis of how we rebuild societies, is by creating connections and actually being allowed and actually allowing ourselves, to rely on the services that are and should be provided to us, no matter where we live.
Yeah.
So that has changed. So it's great. Now it's a quick WhatsApp. Hi, it's not raining today. We're off to clean up. We'll be ready at 11. Thumbs up. We receive photographs back from our team. We send those photographs back, so the communication is visual. This is the amount we collected. Mostly was nappies. There's this. There's a problem. There's a pole that's fallen over. Information that wasn't reaching the city before, from an informal settlement, is now reaching the city, and then the city responds immediately with a picture from the truck. Bags are collected. Everything's done. Now I can walk down the street. There's no litter on the ground. The plants are growing. Everyone's smiling and enjoying the view, the flowers. That's what we want to see.
Absolutely. Sharon, we do, though, have a very real challenge where many of community members, we have more than 50% of our population living below the poverty line, right? And they generally choose locations. We're making reference there to more than 500 townships in eThekwini alone, and there'll be a reason why they would have chosen those areas, because it's close to work. They don't want to have to incur the cost of long distance traveling. We know of people in Cape Town who travel for 2 hours. They spend 80% of their wages on transportation. So if you can build a temporary home that sadly becomes a permanent home for some people in a place that is perhaps not that safe, it's a floodplain, it's next to a metro rail line, whatever the case may be, that person is driven by a need to survive. And here you come and say, we're working with the Department of Water and Sanitation. They want us to do this, but it will inconvenience you, in inverted commas, in this way. How do you get them to buy into a concept that perhaps will make them not quite as comfortable as they are right now?
Well, I think you touched on a very important common theme, is the pollution in rivers. It bothers us all. And we can blame the sources. In the Eerste River catchment, we have approximately between 6 to 8 communities close to the river banks. And we see what ends up in the river. But we are acutely aware of the fact that, you brought it up, that people live in very difficult circumstances. There's one neighborhood that's on a slope, so when it rains, when water runs, it takes everything down to the river, and this is the Plankenbrug River. To really support, to understand that the Plankenbrug River needs help. That's how we do it. It's not about blaming each other. We all live downstream. It's about this livelihood that we depend upon. So when I started out, the big concern was the economy in the winelands, and how a river like the Plankenbrug is a threat to our ability to compete overseas on the shelves and to export our stuff. But what do we need to have a very healthy economy? We need a healthy community that depends on a healthy river. So we talked a lot about that. If you, in the past, if you go through Stellenbosch, you would see those posts on the lamps. Eikestad News specifically said the river is making us sick. And, it's this thing, it's the river and it's them and it's the others. But we are making the river sick. And how do we contribute to that? So we know what we find in the river, but we also find it upstream, so everyone is downstream. Everyone is a victim, if you want to be. So how do we deal with that? We have to go into this in a systemic understanding, and that's how the Stellenbosch River Collaborative came together. Is to say, well, we can blame the municipality because we feel they don't do enough. We can blame water and sanitation, we feel they don't do enough. But from the community side, what do we need to understand what must change? And it's not just the vulnerable communities, also the agricultural communities who these people mostly work for. So there's an education and an advocacy role to play. And if I may, if I can just bring up that lovely dragonfly, the slide, to explain.
Your clicker is there, so they'll be able to bring it up.
Okay. So that dragonfly, so what we did, we worked with art students, communication design art students that needed a project, and we said we want to work with the dragonfly for specific reasons. There's this mini-SAS, it's the South African scoring system of the goggaatjies that you get in the river, and it's an indication how healthy the river is. A river like the Pankenberg River at that stage was sort of a sewage line. So what do we want to do is to, without going into a very bad river, explain to people, show to them how healthy this river is and what could be, what can be. So storytelling, narration of the dragonfly. There's many initiatives that use the dragonfly. I'm very aware of the work that's being done by Kevin Winter and team. Professor Samways is a colleague on campus. And we started to work with this understanding symbolically, what does it mean? And if you look at the biology, the science behind it, what does it mean? Just as a matter of interest, we've got a dragonfly and a damselfly. So the dragonfly is the one with a thick body, damselfly is the one with a slim body. The damselfly DNA, the carbon dated, precedes the fynbos in the southern tip of South Africa. It's the oldest DNA in the world. The dragonfly generally is 300 million years old. But that specific knowledge, you need to see that specific dragonfly in the Western Cape to understand how healthy our environment is in the water bodies. And it sort of energizes people, say, we want to see this. So that's what we used when we sat down with the Berg River Partnership to do a rehash of what's happening there. They used the dragonfly, but what I understood from that is it's just a logo. And a vision, but there isn't more into this. So I worked closely with the students on campus, community members, even in the vulnerable communities, to understand what do you understand from the dragonfly. And the students then went, that's what we wanted. We wanted postcards about dragonflies. And Professor Samways just mentioned that dragonflies, in a sense, is messengers, or are messengers from the future. So the students started to play, and that's one of the two that Kogo adopted. The others are logo. And if you look at the image, it's actually literally illustration of the land use in Stellenbosch. And you'll see the Eerste River as the veins, and you see the white spaces. Those are the gaps that exist between land users, stakeholders, interests. How do we bridge that? And if we talk about governance, we always think, oh, that's the government, the political, the government agencies that needs to govern, or corporates. True, corporates can learn, or we can learn a lot from corporates, but corporates function within fences. They want to reach out, they want to work with vulnerable communities, but they don't have that time. So what happened is with this research is we started to work with the commons. You might have heard about the tragedy of the commons. Free riding, it's open to all, it's difficult to manage, it's difficult to manage waste and all of that. So how do we go into that space, sit around the table and choose the one thing that matters to us, the river. So starting with influencers and decision makers, that's my focus, is actually corporate governance. How can we bring together all these different views? If you look at that picture, everyone has a different lens, how they look at a certain problem. But what's the combining, the pivotal feature that you want to address? So back to pollution. What type of pollution? So we're partnering on a UNESCO project, looking at surface water, available water. It's one of 4 case studies in South Africa, but this one in Stellenbosch is surface water. But we can never ignore the fact that we have to look at quality. So not just the visible stuff, but the invisible stuff, which are way more harmful to people. So if we don't have healthy people, we can't have a healthy economy. And how do we work together to address the pollution in the rivers? So the visible stuff, I think, is easy. It's perpetuating, but it's the invisible stuff that worries us. So we are now working with CLS Group. It's a French company. They do tracking of plastics with remote sensing to see where it makes landfall, because in the end it ends up in the ocean. And how to inspire the communities, all the communities. Like a dragonfly, it's an ambassador, it's a proxy to see where it goes. So if you talk to and that's what we started to understand this year when we worked with water and sanitation, they invited us into this space. How can they be inspired to come to the table in a non-threatening space? That's very important. And interestingly enough, corporates also feel the same. They want a pre-competitive understanding of this interrelations, this interdependence on something, the vein of life that goes through community. Dr. Joe Barnes once said that if you look at the river, it tells you everything. It mirrors what's happening in society.
Yeah, absolutely. In Gauteng, did the fact that the Yexke River at some point made headlines, I remember having to talk about it for a very long time, and never having seen it before. Like, I live in Cape Town, and yet, because I broadcast to Joburg as well, it was something that was on top of everyone's mind. And then, of course, I went to go visit it, and I saw what was then, this is now going back about 8-9 years ago, a really challenging situation. Does that help, or does that hinder the process of engaging with not only community, but all stakeholders who need to come to realize a common vision around the river?
Well, you know, where we are located at the daylight point of the Yexke, we've connected with other very active citizen groups further along and downstream that Lungi also referred to. And one of those groups in particular is the Alexandra Water Warriors, who I take my hat off to. It's a group of 100 people who've been working for over a year, not being paid, wading in that water, removing macro debris or plastics for now. Rand Water has reported a 45% increase in quality of the water from that year downstream. And downstream are the wealthier estates. And, you know, they have money to obviously look at these problems. And the point is, it's such a big problem, actually, but I don't like to use the word problem, because especially in South Africa, we have so many problems. And you know how we go about things personally within our Water for the Future organization is that we approach things as solutionists. Like, we do guided walks with communities, and we now have businesses and journalists and you name it. And we do this 1.5 hour walk where we take everyone and anyone and even people with their dogs, and we walk and we show them this is where the stormwater infrastructure is imploded. We don't say point fingers or stamp our feet or blame government. It's like, this is what we're planning, and we've submitted a grant for this, and this is what we're going to do here, and this is a solution we've implemented here, and the community can see it's working. The Alexandra people come, they look at it, they're like, wow, we can do this with the building rubble that gets dumped. You know, it's so impactful when you're there and you can experience it for yourself and you can make up your own mind as to, okay, what's going on here? I understand this firsthand. And I think that's key in the discussion from all of us coming together, you know, those sitting in the offices and the corporates and whoever the academic institution is like you say, going there and looking and listening, like Lungi refers to. So I don't know if you want to come in.
Yeah, I just wanted to add as well how do we build stronger and better connections between the citizens these resources, the government, the business, and the knowledge as well, so that people are enabled, right? Because when they are in that position, then there's that attitude of helplessness. It just goes because you have all this information and you have all these resources, because no one really wants to clean the river if they're hungry. Like, they just, it's just not there.
That's the reality, right?
Yes.
Because people see taking care of your environment as a luxury. Like, you have to have the luxury of time and resources in order to help to take care of the environment, as opposed to realizing that it's an essential part of your livelihood.
Yes, and bringing that economy and making it secular around us, you know, because then it's just appealing. Yeah, so I mean, for us, those bridges were so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sorry, just on that, like in Gauteng, you know, we don't have that access to nature as you do in the Western Cape, that luxury. And where we've worked, because we go block by block down the river, you know, nature is literally coming back. The bird life has changed. The bees are coming. You see these things. It's refreshing. I crave it when I haven't been there for a few days. I live in the area, but if I haven't been to our happy space, it's like I need to go for the walk. And the grasses, you know, you see this coming alive. And Johannesburg, in that sense, we don't have that around us, and we desperately need this. It's such a tough city, and we need a safe, clean, nature-filled space where we can just actually go and relax in this crazy everyday life. And when we take the people, the kids, I mean, Lungi focuses particularly on the kids.
The future.
Exactly. and it's magic. Like the people with the checkbooks and stuff. You show them that little bird with the long black tail that's never been. Have you seen that? Have you seen that in Joburg? And you know, you don't need to now do another presentation, because they can see for themselves. This is where we are. This is the reality on the street, and this is what's possible, and it's happening. You know, so that's very encouraging.
Yeah, I will be coming to you next with your questions, and of course, if you are watching us on Facebook or YouTube, you can use the comment section to pose your questions for any and all of our panelists. Patrick, let me ask this: there are reports out of KwaZulu-Natal that one cannot swim in the ocean because of E. coli. How do we turn this tragedy into an opportunity where we can showcase the fact that if we don't take care of our rivers, of our water, we will be sick, literally, because we are reporting cases of increased E. coli?
Yeah, so obviously, just to explain a little bit more on the situation, the E. coli situation in Durban, you know, even before the April floods, the E. coli levels in our rivers wasn't the greatest. If you actually just look at almost like the geography of Durban, you know, and the its context, we're a city full of rivers and streams. So, like, you know, as I said, there's 7,400 kilometers worth of rivers and streams. That's very far. That's, you know, like almost 12 times going from Durban to Johannesburg. And now to actually think managing that, it's very ambitious. Also, another kind of an issue is just how, you know, we've kind of have our built infrastructure and our wastewater treatment works there, and our pipes are always in, you know, the lowest parts of your catchments, and that obviously coincides with rivers. So then when you actually have, you know, say flood events or, you know, like lots of rainfall and those type of things, this can cause damage to your built infrastructure. And so now, in our case, okay, we've had our, you know, like water treatment works, our pipes, pump stations being heavily damaged by, you know, firstly, it's like the velocity of the water and the ferocity of this actual water, of the flood water. But another kind of key consideration, and particularly in Durban and KwaZulu-Natal, is this problem of alien invasive plant species. Okay, and you might think, well, how's that related to built infrastructure? But if you actually look at it, when we have kind of floods, your invasive alien plant species generally have shallow roots, and they often get washed away by, your flood events. And, they tend to actually accumulate by built infrastructure. And what we've actually seen is after the flood, if you actually analyze, like the different photographs, you'll often see that at the bottom of, like below bridges, there's all this, invasive alien plant matter, and also some indigenous, but mostly alien plant matter. And then that actually maps also with your solid waste. Okay. And so that basically blocks up, your river channels, your stream channels, your culverts. And then the water actually eventually just goes around your built infrastructure and actually damages it. So, by actually proactively managing or, like your different types of invasive alien plant species, your solid waste, basically ensuring that your river corridors are clear and water can flow, you can actually prevent these type of things. Also, what I just wanted to, this isn't related to the question that you specifically asked me, but also just what you asked some of the other panelists. In the Palmy Catchment Rehabilitation Project, we actually had this very similar, like process that was mentioned by Georgia, where, initially in this space, this informal settlement had a really bad relationship with the local government. And we actually came in there and, through our one research project, and we were asking people, throughout the Palmy catchment, what is your relationship with the river? What is your relationship with the natural environment? And just through that process of actually engaging with people, this actually developed into the Palmy Catchment Rehabilitation Project, and we brought different community members or anyone who's got an interest with the Palmy River, into a space where they could actually co-produce and co-design an action plan, that's got different responsibilities and that. So you've got a number of people working together in, like this kind of, like a participatory governance platform. And so there's a lot of trust around that for this particular project. And even as also what was part of that, where as people from our research team did community-based risk mapping with informal settlers in this Poro Road West informal settlement. And it wasn't us just, as researchers coming in and saying, okay, this is a flood hazard here, fire hazard, these type of things. We actually got the community members to map out their own risks. Yeah. And then also negotiate amongst one another and say, okay, no, that's where that is. And then someone would say, no, what about this and that? And so we actually learned a lot from the community members and brought them, to the university, made them sit in the boardroom, which, some people don't really want informal settlers to come into a boardroom at a university. So this was actually quite a bit of like a transformative process, but it was all about them actually understanding, where these risks are, and also then this informs our action plans and, practices in riverine management. So that's what I'd like to just add. Thanks.
No, thank you very much. Time for questions now. Getting citizens involved in the process is essential. It will take work. It will take investment. There's no magic potion, unfortunately. At least that's what I'm hearing from the panel members. It does take time to get the buy-in, but it is essential for any solution to be sustainable and also to empower, ultimately, those citizens. So if you have any questions for our panel members, please raise your hands and the microphone will come to you. And a reminder, if you're listening to us or watching this rather virtually, to use the comment section on either Facebook or YouTube to pose your questions. Who's going to put their first hand up? Who's going to put their hand up first? English is my fourth language, people. Are you all good? Oh, there's one. There's one from Ndela in the city of Johannesburg. He gets to turn the tables.
Thank you. Great work that you're doing. Thank you. I wonder, and this is not, this question is not specifically to anyone, but the panel in general. You see, how would you advise government then to go about with community participation? Because, you know, in government, there tend to be projects that are time-based, and often as government officials, we don't feel like we have the time, you know. So it often becomes then very difficult when we have to involve the citizens because we only have so much time to consult them, and you know, some consultation workshops turn out well in terms of the turn up of the people, and some don't. But either way, then we feel like, okay, we know we had scheduled time for this, we did it, whether people pitched or not, we have to move on, that type of thing. So how would you advise government to better engage citizens to ensure that participation? Because from where I'm standing, I feel like, you know, we're just consulting. We tick the box that we consulted, and a lot of times I see that we are often not even feeling the obligation to be inclusive of the community, but rather that, you know, we did the process, we've ticked the box, and we're moving along with the project. Thank you.
I think you've half identified the challenge in your question. It is, I think, shifting the approach from this is an exercise I'm obligated to do, and I'm just going to do it to tick the box, and actually truly, meaningfully wanting to engage with community around these things. And if community is not going to come to your invited meeting, understand why. Is there something not inviting about the environment that I've invited them to? Is there something, is it difficult for them to access it? Or whatever the case may be. Is it at a time when Generations and Legacy is on? Do you know what I mean? Like you ask sort of those practical questions and really work with the community for a time that works with them. At least that's my uninformed answer to your question. Sharon, you probably have done, I mean, you all have done a lot with government, but your program particularly looks to bridge that gap. How would you advise on Ndela?
So interestingly enough, when I started with my research, the Stellenbosch municipality was one of the first stakeholders with the other relevant government agencies. And they asked us, please stop beating us, assist us. You know, we want a safe space where we can share with you our frustrations, you know, the bottlenecks, the challenges. The moment they said that, the moment they opened up like that, the other parties in this group that I consulted with as stakeholders, and they are the STEL, SPEED, WWF, Cape Nature, a homeowners association, they were eager to sit around the table and say, how can we help you? And started to talk about the real issues without the sensitivity that usually pops up, or, you know, the pushing back, you know, in our case, NEMBA, NEMA, but. We know about that, so that's the first thing. You have to know what your policy framework looks like, but you also need to know what informal norms may come into this place. How do we engage with each other? What does the rules say? And it's not always in the rule books, because from experience earlier, we knew that there's a huge gap between Department of Water and Sanitation and Environmental Affairs if we talk about invasive slurry in the river, because of the process. And to explain, we had a situation, I think it was in 2014, where some sewage ended up in the Ears River because there was maintenance on the wastewater treatment plant. And it was just as the tourists arrived for the Christmas season, flying past Spear. Because of those relationships, people could literally take their phones, Spear could call Water and Sanitation, a specific person, and a specific person at the municipality and environmental affairs say, this is the situation. We have one of two routes that we can go. We can go lawsuit, this is something we want to take legal action on, or can we deal with this in a different way? Thank you, Spear, for seeing, there's a different way, because we were around the table for so long. The municipality immediately said, yes, let's discuss this on the phone. The water and sanitation team said, this is what we can guide you to do. Within 2 weeks, that problem was addressed, without losing, from the tourism sector, and without trespassing on any law. But in March, we could come together and say, what did we learn from this? How can we support you further? Is this a possibility in the future? So we knew in advance, for instance, that there may be more spills, and it's just due to the nature of the update and so on. And it really, really, the emotions that usually flared up and it ended up in media, it went away. There was this relationship of, I want to make a suggestion. The Stel, for instance, the Plankenbrug River can stink a lot. And this guy understood, the sustainability manager, if you divert the water higher up and you just flush the river, then the problem is addressed. Also in tourist time at Bergkelder, and he called the engineer and said, listen, are you willing to do this? The engineer said, yes, let's do it, problem solved. Without all the meetings, all the threats, media stuff, all of that. So on the other hand, municipalities need to endorse this kind of spaces. They have to support it, they have to, and that's what we enjoy in Stellenbosch. They will say, bring Kogo in, bring the Stellenbosch River Collaborative in, we need to sit around the table and discuss this from the different angles. How do we understand it? What's possible? And also for funding.
I think his challenge is more primary. He needs to get people in the room in order to build that trust. Romy?
I'm so glad to see you on Dell. I bumped into him at breakfast as well. I always feel for the city officials. I wouldn't want to be them, but every other time I have a meeting, I'm so, I say to friends and family, I was like, there are so many incredible civil servants out there, champions who do this work on weekends, in their spare time, who care. Who do this. It's not just a job and getting their paycheck. They actually care. And the media is full of all the doom and gloom. But
I'm sorry, but that's our job. If it's going to make the news, unfortunately, there has to be something out of the ordinary about it. And that is the nature of the work we do.
But it's like, how do we focus our energy? So what Ondela is asking for is a space, a safe space that Sharon is referring to. Yeah. NGOs like ourselves and many others, we offer that safe space. We can never understand this big picture, the big problem you need to deal with, but private, corporate, everybody understands we need to come to the party. Everybody is waiting because we've seen the E word. Eskom.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And we just can't allow that to happen with water. I mean, and we know we headed there, and we need to have these safe spaces now to just start having these difficult conversations and understanding how can we help you. Exactly what Sharon is saying.
Can I ask a practical question? Do you have a database of NGOs that you can then reach out to and say, we need to consult on this particular, piece of legislation or whatever the case may be, and then ask them to help with getting the people in the room?
Yeah, there is. I think personally, I find there is the database, but for one reason or another, as you said, you can never get people at the same time, to a same place, and so there's almost like there's a continuous engagement and relationship building that's required, but at the same time, society expects results, you know. So you only have so much time for public engagement, and then there must be results, whether from society or the powers above, but there must be throughput at the end, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the difficulties are. But I did get from the panelists that I think more than anything, it's about building the relationships even outside of the time of those projects.
Yeah.
So, but by the time the projects come, it's very quite easy to pick on those contacts. Thank you.
Either that or give them a braai and they'll come.
Sorry, I also wanted to answer your question.
Yes.
That's okay. Is there time?
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay, this might seem a little out there, but I really believe in this. Incentivize. And don't incentivize like we're going to pay you to come to our meeting. If you want to have your majority of an area that you want to transform, if you want to have the majority of the citizens of that area engage with your project so that you can have the most successful outcome, you're going to have to consider that, and someone else said this, I'm just going to repeat it, but I can't remember his name right now, but it was something like someone in poverty is not interested in your meeting. That person isn't interested in your agenda. That person wants to know about what's for lunch, where the next nappy's coming from, how much it's going to cost, and where they're going to get water to wash their baby's bottom after they've wiped it. So those are the things that are important to the citizenry that you are trying to connect with. And you're saying to them, despite your poverty, you need to come and join my meeting. I'm very disappointed. Favorite word, human behavior. I'll tell you about human behavior. We're humans. We're all the same. Whether you're throwing your motor oil down the stormwater in your house in Rondebosch, or whether you're chucking it in the river, you're still a sinner. So we need to first understand that if we want to engage with our entire citizenry, we have to consider the challenges that they face. So here's the solution. Create depots. Say, we will pay you 1,000 Rand per ton to bring your waste to this depot. Register here. Boom, card. Are you with Time Bank, Capitec? Where are you? In they go. And you don't have to bring your ton on the same day. We're not asking for that. Trolley at a time is fine. Bring it, dump it, swipe it. Money in the bank. You hit a ton, $1,000. Wow. No street litter. No junk in the river. We'll pay you more for your motor oil. No more mess. And then what will Romy and I do?
Get excited
once again,
about alien invasive removal because you can make firewood, weave, mulch. Here you go, sell.
guys, these are all wonderful solutions. He needs to get them into a room to have a meeting. That's his primary challenge right now, and perhaps go to them. I mean, that becomes a solution where you actually go to where they are, as opposed to expecting them to come to where you are. This will continue over lunch. My next question.
Hi, thank you. Andrew MacDonald, City of Cape Town, in the Catchment Stormwater team. Just perhaps to reflect on some of the work that we're doing under our Livable Urban Waterway program, which perhaps answers your question to some extent, is community engagement is absolutely critical. And you cannot do it to tick the box because some environmental authorization requires it right at the end of the process when all the design work's been done already. You've got to go from the very beginning. And we're going through that journey now with about 4 or 5 of our projects. We've had six engagements with the communities already. We've got the next 3 coming in the next couple of months. And it's hard work, but it's incredibly important and it's very rewarding. The people that I've met, the local community leaders, the passion that these people have, the knowledge of the river that they have, that no city official or consultant engineer will ever know because they don't live next to the river. They don't use the river every day. They're not a school kid that crosses the bridge made out of mattresses every day just to get to school. Projects, when they are conceptualized, have to account for the time and the budget and the resources necessary to do the engagements. So, it all starts when you conceptualize the project and you can make the time in the project program, you can allocate the budget for the necessary engagements, and you can write the scope of works so that that kind of work is actually done. And I would highly recommend that certainly for river projects, rivers as important socio-ecological systems, that the society is at the top table in the discussions, meaningfully contributing to what that river space looks like. And through this process, we're already seeing some wonderful spin-off benefits. The formation of a friends group in Westlake Village, an impoverished community who see the river as a liability. It's a place to throw rubbish, effectively. Yet it has such potential to be a community asset. And a local newly formed co-op has created a friends group. They've reached out to the established friends group across the motorway in the well-established leafy suburb of Kirstenhof. Two communities who would previously never have spoken to each other are now collaborating and connecting, creating a friends group. They had their first cleanup last week. I'm going out there this afternoon, in fact, to help with a school group walk around, connecting the Westlake Primary School with a number of others in the area. And it's activating the community, and that would never have happened through a project run out of the head office of a municipality.
How did you activate the community and shift the dial in that community that this is something that we need to take on as a project?
So each community is different, each project space is different. So the very first thing is we reached out to the councillor. Thankfully, she is already connected in the community, incredible woman, and she already has relationships with really, really important community leaders. She connected us with them and made a lot of phone calls. Went out to the village and actually visited these people, made time to engage with them, warm them up to the fact that this project is coming and we need your help, we need your involvement. Make them part of the process rather than just sending them an email saying there's a workshop next week.
Yeah.
They were able to then reach out to their networks, their connections, their friends, their families. The religious community, very important. Tap into churches, tap into mosques, tap into early child development centers, any NGOs that are working in the space, and just general community leaders, that are out there. So it's very important to map these people before the project starts and to engage with them from the very outset. And we're still at the beginning. So, what the future holds, I don't know. But certainly from what we've gone through, it's looking very promising. And each space is different. Westlake, that project's going to be very different to the Coniston Park project. Very different. And that's going to be very different to the Grootbush Kloof project. Very different to the Vijgenkraal project. But the principles are the same. And it's shifting that dial in the municipal engineer's mind that engagement must happen at the very beginning, and it must be throughout the project.
Yeah.
Even once the project's finished and the construction team is off-site and the landscaping team is done. In fact, that's probably where the ongoing engagement is even more important, so that space can continually be looked after and cared for by the communities in partnership with them.
And Jordan Lewis will give you the budget for that, yeah?
Well, I'm hoping. I'm hoping. So far, so good.
So far, so good, yeah.
Just add to what you say, and I'm looking at Kirsty. Universities play a pivotal role in this space because we need data, we need efforts from researchers to engage with this. So often, in the type of work that we do, it starts with a research project. And municipalities, the government structures are very more lenient, more acceptable. They accept the fact that when researchers approach them, this has gravity, and it will have a sustainable course.
All right, thank you for that. Lungi?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, yes, public dialogues are important.
Is your microphone on? I'm not.
Yeah. No, I was just saying I want to add to, yes, public dialogues are important, but there's a need for creative interventions. For us, we used theater with the kids to use it as a voice, to use it as a representation to social issues. because it just hit home deeper to them than to have these talks, because then they get to feel, okay, how does it feel for the sea world, living in spaces where it's just polluted with our consumerism. It's just not fair to them. So we found that those interventions really have a deeper impact than just talking, ticking boxes, and yeah.
Yeah. Do you mind passing it on to the lady in green, and then we'll go to the lady in white after that?
Yeah, so this is just connecting with quite a few of the things that have just been said. My name's Laura, and I work at CPUT, so I come from an academic background, but also an art and design background. And well, there's two sides of the involvement of the arts, all kinds of arts in processes like this for me. The one side that I'm quite interested in is if we think about the word aesthetic, if we can define that word as the opposite of anesthetic, and this is not my invention. I heard this from a lady called Shelley Sachs. She's someone who works in social sculpture. But if we say that aesthetic is the opposite of anesthetic, then aesthetics and art is that thing that enlivens, that makes us feel, that is the opposite of numbness. And I think that, so in the arts have this amazing ability to make people aware of, to make them feel certain things, like you've mentioned now. And then the other side of it is that when we do research for projects, then if we do research for resilience building and for sort of life-centered design, then we do need to include all voices, and many social research methods don't allow for that. So what I'm an advocate of is using art-based and participatory research methods to collect very rich data that can give us insights and include voices that would otherwise not be included. But what we found is that using arts-based and participatory research methods it is very resource intensive. It takes time, and it's not a rush job. So maybe in the planning of projects at a municipality level, the planning of the project and the project timeline needs to take into consideration that part of the project will need a certain amount of time. Einstein said if he's got and this is going against what you said earlier on being solution driven, but if he said, if I have a problem to solve in 60 minutes, I'll spend 55 minutes on the problem and 5 minutes on the solution. Because really taking the time to understand the problem will save us so much time and resources in the long run.
Which speaks to what the City of Cape Town official was saying there earlier, that you go and understand the challenge along with the community, as opposed to only engaging the community at the end of the process where you've already designed your solution that you're effectively imposing on that community.
So I'm seeing it in the same way as how I think one should treat ethics in a research project, where it's not you don't write up an ethics plan, get it approved, and then you're done with ethics. Ethics is something that you have to think about before the project starts and way after the project ends. So involving community is also something that needs to happen before the project is even planned.
Good luck to the bureaucrats. The lady in white, please. It is on.
Oh, good, cool. So Tamsin, also from the City of Cape Town.
Tamsin.
We're sticking together today. I've been working with Andrew on the Livable Urban Waterways program since the inception, and that was, I think, an important part of where we are now, is that inception and that framework document that we put together that very clearly stated one of the outcomes of each project needs to be a friends group that then is involved at the end as well as in at the beginning, and being very much a part of that process of development and implementation, etc. One of the other things I do is run an open space working group, and we've been doing a number of site visits across the city to, some of them are water spaces, but some of them are just parks. And what's been very interesting is to see where the successes are, and the successes are those spaces that have some kind of a vision, some kind of a master plan, and a master plan, some people don't like that word, it's got that blueprint, it's inflexible, but it shows you what needs to be done. And I think where we sometimes fail is that communities get involved in solving a problem and then it's done and then everybody leaves. Whereas if you have a vision and a plan to say, right, well, this is what we've got budget to do, to do this, and next time we can do that. And there's this constant kind of building of that dream and of that vision, rather than just of coming together around a problem.
And who sets that vision?
Well, the ones that, the one particular project that I'm thinking of is a Princess Flay, and that was through a community-based activism. Denisha, I think, was one of the panelists on one of the previous events. And they worked with the city and came up with a master plan. And that master plan is being implemented over time by the forum, the Princess Flay Forum, but also by the city. So there's this kind of ongoing engagement of work, of actual project stuff, but also activation. And that's the other thing. It's not just about the project, it's about the activation. It's about bringing people in, it's about the using of that space, which then adds to that relevance of that space and that making and that nurturing of that connection between the people and the space, which if you're not going to do that, you're wasting your money. You might as well be just putting a big old concrete whatever it is in. So it's that, good stakeholder engagement starts at the very conceptualization of the program of the projects. And it's ensuring that idea ends up in that scope of work and that it's properly budgeted and properly resourced, etc. So it's that kind of, it's making sure of threads, which is not always easy because sometimes you're just handing stuff over. It's like, right, done, off to the next stage of the sausage machine.
Yeah. Let me ask a politically sensitive question, which I appreciate you might not be able to answer. No. It is, in fact, it was established yesterday, and I want to hear what the City of Cape Town's sort of approach is. Politically, I suppose Cape Town is more stable, as in the same political party has been in government for quite some time now. Not quite what's happening in Joburg. But how do you divorce the political house of cards, Game of Thrones game that is happening at council level to the work that you're doing? Therefore, if you go into a community, you help devise a master plan, you engage and activate that community, how do you ensure that project that started fruition is actually going to be seen through all the way to the end, regardless of who's wearing the chain at Civic Centre in Cape Town?
So we call that making a project politically bulletproof. I think the City of Cape Town is less of Game of Thrones, more Days of Our Lives.
Do not tweet that.
Yes. Oops. It's really hard. And I've seen a number of projects falter because of that shift in priorities. And I think we've been very lucky with our new mayor in how he's adopted the priorities we agree with and is taking those forward. And it's not just the priorities, it's the budgets. If you really want to see if a city is prioritizing something, check the budget. And those budgets are, it's a 5-year thing. So I think what helps is to have really good public officials who set projects up in such a way that they're bedded down and they kind of have buy-in, but also to have partnerships. So it's partnerships with external organizations. So, if you have a bit of a wobble in the administration, you have external partners who can also still push, which is why the friends groups and the catchment management forums are so important, because they can keep going, and then hopefully the next political iteration will pick the baton up and you'll keep moving.
I do hope there's a forum where the metros meet regularly. In one of the creative exchange dialogues we had, we actually were praising City of eThekwini for its, particularly its drainage system and policy around that. That might have been you actually who said we could learn from eThekwini. Ondela is certainly making notes as, you know, we are sharing our experiences in Cape Town. We shared what's happening in Stellenbosch. It would be lovely to have some sort of forum where officials get to, you know, have this conversation and go...
Our friends group.
Our friends group, exactly. That says, this is what we did, have you tried that? Thank you very much for that. We've got a question in the lady in black in the end there.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, sorry. As a rule, when you hand over the microphone, don't switch it off. Just leave it on, and then we'll manage it from the back. But thank you.
Hi, Sarah Polonsky, Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, the Natural Resource Management Programs. I've got a question which is, in a sense, from my experience, often the interest or the getting onto a resourcing radar means that there's something already happening in a space that kind of predates government's investment from whatever sphere of government. And I wonder what are those kind of what are the key catalyzing things that are in place? I mean, we've heard summits around, often it's civil society and community activism, but I wonder the extent to which at a local government level those things also inform how your resourcing is then prioritized, because there's a sort of a tension between going where things are working and there's an energy that's likely to enhance success, and also investing in places where there really is a big gap. Thank you. I think that's more towards the city officials.
Indeed.
If I may, and to the panel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any particular panelist you'd like to tackle that, or?
No.
Okay, cool. You guys can decide among. And Patrick, we haven't forgotten about you. I promise you. Maybe we can come to you with that question. How you work with municipalities and local government around prioritizing. That we'll give it to you the minute we get to hear from the two city representatives that are here. So we'll hear both from Joburg and Cape Town, if that's okay.
Yeah, very good comment and quite an important question. Prioritizing is never easy because you've got so many pressing needs at the same time, and so many different obligations and interests to try and spread your very thin resource base, whether it's budget or people or other resources, in a fair way. So we certainly in Cape Town do take prioritization very seriously. Saying that, there are low-hanging fruit where you would want to start a project or build on some existing good work done, whether it's previous work by the city or by community groups. It's building on successes already. It's often a lot easier to get successful projects going where there already is an active community group who have done some really good work. Half your stakeholder engagement is already done if you've got those relationships built already. And you can leverage some incredible value with a small amount of investment off the back of some hard work done by others already. And the Princess Flay example is perhaps a great example of that. A lot of great work done by the Princess Flay Forum as an NGO. The city is supporting that now and is investing a little bit of time and effort around that, but the benefits are amplified. So yeah, I mean, it also works. The other side of the coin is, you've got to go where it's difficult, because that's where the real need is. And certainly, through the Livable Urban Waterway program, the current projects which we have underway are in relatively easy spaces, because we're trying to learn, we're trying to get it right, and almost not guarantee, but give us at least a fighting chance of success. Building on the really good work done by predecessors over the years in those catchments. But we're about to embark on some very exciting but also very challenging work in the neighboring catchment of the Zikweflei, the Big and Little Lotus rivers, where there's been very little work done which we can build on. And we are, again, with the C40 City Finance Facility support, so the same support that eThekwini have been leveraging in the last 4 years for their transformative program.
So what would be the catalyst to go to Zikweflei then? So if the one is a low-hanging fruit, an activated community already, therefore we can show and demonstrate a result in a fairly efficient amount of time, why is the city deciding, or what are the contributing factors that determine Zikweflei as a project?
For me personally, I think there's significant benefits, not just a flood benefit or a water quality benefit, but multiple benefits by putting in properly planned and designed interventions in the Zikwe catchment. And probably the biggest benefit, if we can get it right, and I caveat by saying if we can get it right, because it's not guaranteed that we'll get it right, is the socio-economic benefits that our projects should be able to unlock for members of the local community. So, tapping into the green economy, the circular economy, job opportunities off the back of the green economy. These are the kinds of things which we need to start exploring through our projects. It's not just a river rehabilitation project where we bring in an engineer and an aquatic ecologist. We've got to start to tap into the socio-economic elements as well.
Yeah.
And that's why that catchment has been chosen. There's a real need for the rivers there. Downstream Zikweflei, which is really suffering quite badly from all the upstream catchment land use and interventions. But the communities there desperately need interventions which can sort of unlock opportunities for them. Yeah. And we'll be exploring that through this work.
Cool. Tamsin?
Sorry, can I just build on what Andrew was saying? So, I mean, all of the current ongoing livable urban waterways projects, as well as the new ones, are also located on the Cape Flats Aquifer. And we need to recognize that we as a city are going to be using that water as part of our bulk water supply. So ensuring that it's recharging the way that it needs to, and that the water quality that's recharging the groundwater is a decent quality, is a top priority. Yeah. So it's starting to recognize that interconnectivity of water systems. It's not just surface water is one part of it, and our reliance on that resource going forward, and that resource as part of a broader resilience strategy. I'll leave it on now.
For sure. Nella, from the City of Joburg point of view, how do you prioritize your projects?
Thank you. I probably will speak not entirely on behalf of the city and how they mobilize projects, but rather where I'm sitting, which is the Environment and Infrastructure Services Department, which is more of a policy based, develop bylaws and policies and so forth. And what usually then informs projects there is really usually responding to certain concerns from the communities or business, whether they come via the media or they come via certain groups, which is why I asked the question that I asked earlier, because from where I'm sitting, I really feel like most of the agenda and most of the projects are driven more by the privileged, and I feel like even when there's community engagements, I often feel like there's a part of society that is left out here, and hence I was asking the question of how do you get even deeper in trying to make sure that everyone is taking along and not just a certain privileged groups of society. And so even when you are engaging, from my perspective, certainly certain MPOs and so forth, I often ask myself, even if an NPO is from Soweto, for example, but how much of the society of Soweto are these two NPOs representing? Because you are dealing with such a huge population, and how sure are you that their interests and everyone's input is considered in this group of 100 people, when I'm supposed to be doing a policy that's going to be affecting 6 million people in Johannesburg?
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, that's a fair point. Thank you. Patrick, I know you don't speak on behalf of the city of eThekwini, but you do quite a bit of work with them. How, from what you know, how does the city, what catalysts, I suppose, need to be activated in order for the city to say we're prioritizing this particular project?
I would say, just from my experience with the TRMP, is that okay, when you look at our rivers and water, we need to manage it in an integrated manner. But if you actually look at how our institutions are actually designed, especially institutions with environmental functions, they operate in silos. So you need some type of way to actually kind of cross that. Okay, so in terms of the Transformative Riverine Management Program in eThekwini, they've looked at various and considered various things. Like what other people have already mentioned. Just something different is what they've looked at is known as taking the top slice of the budget. Okay, for the TRMP. So basically what that means is you look at the entire budget of the city, and you actually have to convey the importance of your particular project or program, that it actually results in like it being considered so important that it actually takes almost from other departments. But what actually what I think really matters is having the practical demonstrability of these projects, and actually quantifying the value, showing how you can basically use your limited scarce resources more effectively, by actually doing your different interventions that like in an integrated way across these silos. Another thing, what just from like our experience is, you've got to actually engage with the right people, in your municipality. So a lot of our TRMP work is done with the senior managers of these different departments. But if you actually look who's deciding on the budgets and that, it's the heads of the department. So you actually have to learn on how to engage with these different heads of the departments, the deputy heads as well. And you have to view this almost as a process of managing rivers or waterways in an integrated manner. Another thing, particularly in the case of Durban, is that you actually have to consider the local development context. And I think a lot of our work in Durban, considers, okay, whatever you do, is it creating jobs? Is it alleviating poverty? Our national imperatives. So then, if you come with a project such as Seashland Velo, which is based in the former township areas that are high density, low income, and you're actually creating jobs while doing these things. The politicians love that that story. So you've got to try to create some type of alignment between your best technical process to follow, and then also your political imperatives. So I think that would be my take on it.
Well, here's a wonderful project that you can take to the city of eThekwini. They can employ thousands of people to remove alien plant vegetation because unfortunately the rate at which we're pulling them out of the ground, they're growing much faster. We can then give it to somebody who's going to turn it into biofuel, and all these airlines are going to start buying it and flying with it as opposed to the airline there. It really, really is a wonderful potential ecosystem that will help us take care of the environment, provide socioeconomic solutions to some of the challenges that are really fixated. Well, fixated is not the word, but they're there, and it seems that we're just not coming up with solutions enough to address them. That's one. That's from me. I'll take a 2% cut of whatever you make from it. Thank you, Patrick. I think, George, I'll give you the final question of the day before I bring in Helena as well as Erica. Le Rototi Molapo, who's attending virtually, says, I'm a copywriter and digital content creator. I'm honestly tired of looking at organizations changing the world around me. How do I get involved in devising solutions with such social impact?
Sorry, I can't remember the name of the person, but I'm going to say this to you.
Liro Todi.
Liro Todi. When we're finished, please walk outside your front door, go onto your street, look around you, and just collect all the rubbish you see. And do it all the time. And wherever you go, take a little bag and just pick it up. Just keep going. Because what your little impact is going to become the way of the world of the future. And unless it starts with your immediate environment and your community around you, your friends, your family, picking up the dog poop if you're taking the poodle for a walk, take responsibility for your space. If you drive a car and there's an oil leak, have that corrected immediately. Take responsibility for your consumption. Choose at the supermarket shelf. You don't need to join a cleanup group. Great if you do, but you don't need to join one. You just need to look after your choices, and you need to expand that. Please don't preach to lots of people about it because you will lose friends overnight. Don't do that. But I really, really recommend that. And plogging is apparently a thing. I don't think I've got the coordination to jog and collect litter, but apparently that's a thing as well. And something that works quite well as well is if you're walking down the street and you see someone flicking a cigarette out your window, just say, do you know that the city of Cape Town can fine you 2,000 Rand for that? And they've got cameras everywhere. I've done this a few times. People actually jump out of their cars.
That's a good trick, actually. That's a very good trick.
It's a true story too. So just take responsibility for your experience of the world and become the environment that you want to see. Sorry, Gandhi, that you want to see going forward. Thank you.
Please help me say thank you very much to all of my panelists for this morning. Georgia, Sharon, Romy, Lungile, and joining us virtually is Patrick. Your insights have been most valuable. And thank you, the audience, delegates rather, to this festival for engaging and for answering some of the questions that were posed of you. Thank you very much, ladies. It's been a lot of fun. And they'll continue joining us here on Young Blood for lunch, and you can engage with them, of course, and there'll be some workshops. I'm now going to bring in, you'll need to come off stage now, thank you, so that we can, you can take over with you. While that's happening, of course, we will bring back the Consul General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, South Africa here in Cape Town, that's Helena Rekers, as well as Erica Alk, the Group CEO of the Craft and Design Institute, for a reflection on what they've heard today. And then Erica will give us a very good sense of what's going to happen this afternoon in the workshops, and of course looking forward to the awards as well. It's been fruitful, ladies. It's been engaging, and it's a lot of work ahead for us, isn't it? What did you make of today, Helena?
Thank you. I actually would like to approach this from the perspective of a civil servant, and therefore I feel a lot for what the gentleman from Johannesburg was saying about showing results versus the stakeholder engagement. Because the risk is that it becomes mutually exclusive, and that is paralyzing. And that is what nobody wants, of course. And I heard a lot of good examples of where the engagement can be very fruitful. So I don't pretend to know the answer either. The only thing that I can think of as an additional thought to all of this is how important it is also to, and I call it segment your stakeholders. I mean, there are, and I didn't hear that yet, and so therefore I'd like to mention it. There are stakeholders that are perhaps younger and like to use the internet. So coming back to the city of Rotterdam, they opened a website and they call it stakeholder engagement for the blue-green grid. So people, there is a segment of your stakeholders that like to contribute that way, that don't have to come to a meeting, but like to say what they think. Then there are, and I heard people say that there are people that want to think along creatively. They need to be brought in early. But then there are people that just want to be heard and perhaps not have great ideas. And you can also find a way to accommodate that, but knowing that these people are not the creators with you. And then it was mentioned, the politicians that want to be able to show results, and then it becomes very important, and you exactly did that, the communication. Make sure that you emphasize something that you know the politician is helpful for them. So you can emphasize the employment creation. But the segmentation of your stakeholders, I think, is one that perhaps helps in this whole thought process of making sure that the stakeholders are heard, but that the results are also achieved.
And I think for me, not only this festival, but the series of dialogues we've had all year, the one thing that we kept on coming back to is that it's the process that matters. It's a process that's important. We can be very solutions focused, like I want those 2 ferns to be as green as possible, without actually engaging in the process that it's going to take for us to get to that. And I imagine that's something that resonates with you. It was something that the lady in the green top said, that we need to spend 55 minutes of the hour on the problem, the challenge, understanding it, coming up with solutions, prototyping, testing, discarding, doing it again before we get to the 5 minutes where we say, this is the solution that we want to place forward.
Well, that's correct, but the risk of that is ultimately that the result is never reached, that the process becomes too important. And that's why I feel so much for what the gentleman also yesterday was telling us about Johannesburg. And perhaps I can bring in one example of an earlier co-create meeting that we had, and that was the area of Liesbeek. I was very, very impressed at their presentation. It was already a successful community engagement, but you could use that as an example to try to make the process at least oriented towards finding the results.
A solution. Erica, what were some of your reflections from today?
Am I on? No? Yes.
Yes.
So I think a bit sort of talking to this issue of like when and how do you engage the community is that then it's kind of like the consultation process needs to be part of the scope of works. I think Tamsin might have used that term. That it's part of it's a fundamental part of the process, and it's budgeted for, and the provision is made for the intermediaries or interlocutors or whatever who are going to try and facilitate that engagement. And then the second thing, just thinking about what you just said now, and the experience of the Yukscape project, or what you were talking about, is actually part of the process. It's not just in a room out of the context of what it is that you're trying to do, but the process is in action. If I'm making sense.
Yeah.
So it's actually part of visiting the site or engaging in the site or taking people to the site, thinking about the solutions in the space. So that the process isn't just about, well, what is the solution and how are we going to get there. You're getting there as part of the process, if this is making sense.
It is definitely. It's part of that experiential learning process, right?
Yes.
Where
Yes.
if a community member who lives alongside the river knows exactly what happens in that corner of the river at this time of the year because of A, B, C, D, go to that corner of the river, witness it, experience it, work with a community member to come up with a solution.
And part of the kind of design thinking process is the kind of think and do fast and fail fast. So
Yeah.
if you're doing that kind of process and it's experiential and you're learning, you're seeing what's working, what's not working, and you're finding the solution in the mix.
Yeah. Well, it's 12 noon, which means the gun, whatever, is about to shoot in Cape Town. And we're going to be breaking for lunch. What happens after lunch?
So after lunch, we have a workshop with the 10 finalists for the shortlisted finalists for the award. And in fact, we're going to be processing. There was your
Noon gun. Yeah.
We're going to be talking exactly about this topic. Is what was the process that you went through? What did you learn? How would you do it differently? Looking at partnerships, looking at stakeholder engagement. And our idea is that actually if we can harvest some of the lessons and kind of best practice out of that could be a real outcome of these 2 days, or in fact the last couple of months of focusing on water sensitive design.
And of course, this evening we have the Co-Create Blue-Green Cities Design Awards.
Yep. And as you said yesterday, pity those who aren't going to be there.
Because we are fully oversubscribed as far as RSVPing is concerned. We will be celebrating wonderful organizations and projects and initiatives that enhance best practice and focus, of course, on water quality issues. And I imagine you guys have been inundated with just incredible solutions, and to choose a winner or a number of winners is going to be difficult for you.
And the fabulous thing about the way this event has been designed is we don't know who the winner is yet. So the shortlisted potential awardees, are going to be pitching their projects to a panel of judges. And along with the votes that people have cast, we'll be deciding this evening on who the winners are. So I think it's a fabulous way of doing awards. Looking forward to it.
It really is. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for this process. Helena, thank you for your insights as well. Thank you for attending, and thank you for your engagement as well on Facebook and YouTube. It's been a wonderful 2 days of a festival. It all culminates in the awards this evening. I hope that the process has given you enough inspiration to start engaging with some real issues and realizing, as Georgia was saying, that even in your small micro circle, you can actually have a huge impact. So make the right decision starting today. Have a wonderful Thursday, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Thank you. Thank you very much.